Okay, awesome. So just starting stuff off, what do you guys think are the most important part of the music scene? This could be resources, places, people, values, anything like that. It can be concrete or abstract. Yeah, Wyatt, go for it.
Cool. I can start. A big thing I think is accessibility. I know, especially for younger people in the state, when I was 16, 17, 18, getting into music, it was a lot about accessibility of venues. Most venues in downtown are 21 plus, which if you're 18 and 19 trying to go to shows and enjoy concerts, and the Olympics 21 plus, Neuralex is 21 plus. We had the Crux for a while. That was like really early high school for me, and that went out. Um, but I think accessibility to shows, not being constrained by just the fact that you can't go to a bar when you're 18 or 19 to see a show, I think that's a big thing. I, Again, this isn't really even me speaking as a musician. I'm involved in the music scene, but not as a musician. um yeah, I think it's like accessibility, and that's, I can say on behalf of like being with the Pulse, that's what we strive to do, was to bring music that's typically harder to get for people, and highlight it for students, and then specifically just in the Treasure Valley in general. So I think a big thing for me is accessibility.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that one. I'm 21 now, so it's kind of funny how like when I was in high school and early college, I was like so mad I couldn't go places. And then once I turned 21, it was during COVID, so I wasn't really thinking about it anyway. But I'd say for sure that's a big issue and a big part of the scene.
Yeah, I turned 21 last May, so it was like, oh, I can finally go see bands at the Neuralux and the Olympic and shit, and then all of them get canceled. So
Yeah, I turned 21 in December, so it was just like, oh god. Does anyone else want to add anything? Yeah, go for it, Carson.
I was gonna say that one of the biggest, like, the coolest things about being in the scene is knowing people, meeting people. When I go to a show, even if like not even the musicians, like people that are there, are super cool, and they know other people who know people who know people who play in bands, and so you can like organize shows with them. And doing that, you're just like basically networking, and I think that's really cool. But
Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, there's this weird silver lining to the no venue aspect where all the bands have to do it themselves, and Boise isn't super big in terms of like the music or art scene in general. It's there, but it's not super lively. So everyone's just kind of homies with each other, and we're all trying to like make it work. Like there's one venue in town where we can all go hang out. That's the Hive, right? Because all the other ones closed down due to COVID. And I guess the Shredder too, but even that, two venues isn't really enough to supply for like a valley's worth of music. So this like community like Carson's talking about, where we put together like DIY house shows or river shows or whatever, I think that's really cool.
For sure.
yeah,
Yeah, go for it, Wyatt.
I was going to say just that whole mentality of, when I said accessibility, that there's not a lot of venues, it just means that the community has to like adapt and change to fit that we have to start doing house shows, and we have to do river shows. And us with the Pulse, it's like, okay, we'll open up our offices basically to have bands come in and play, because we would love to have them on air or do stuff recording with that. And also going off the idea before of like community, I think that's a huge thing. Yeah, where you go to a show, like when we hosted Pulse Fest like 2 weeks ago, it was like, oh, cool, I know Cameron's over there, I know, oh, look, it's Thomas. It's like, oh, we have all the people in the Phets. It was like bands that we had playing and doing stuff with us were at that show supporting other bands also playing in the Valley. So I think like support and community also plays a really big role too.
Oh, dude, totally. And like the fact that you put on the Pulse Fest where all the bands played like completely different sets too. Like that's kind of a cool thing about Boise, is that you'll see like an indie band play with like a heavy metal band or a death metal band. And then you'll see like surf rock with like straight up bedroom pop. And it's like, we don't really have a choice. There's no click. I mean, maybe there is, but we're all just trying to make it work. And I think that's cool.
Yeah, I was about to say, I've only been here for 2 years, so I don't know too much about the music scene here. But from what I've seen, it's like so diverse. There's so many different like genres of bands here. because like compared to like Tucson where I'm from, it's very dominantly country music and then very niche like bands. It's like the whole music scene in Tucson, Arizona is very small and niche. Most of the music scene is like overshadowed by Phoenix, Arizona, but like here it's so diverse. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's weird because like Boise is like Idaho's music scene, because anywhere else it is that it's niche, it's country, it's bluegrass. But like I don't know any country bands my age really, and I don't like thinking that it's Idaho and it's country, it's Yee whatever. Like I can think of one band that's like kind of in my age range, like 5 years older than me, that plays country music, and that's funny that you brought that up. So I just wanted to say that.
I think Noble does country in one of his bands too.
Yeah, for sure. But like Noble's band isn't country, it's like that's like people our age aren't really writing country music, I don't feel like.
I agree with.
Yeah, I think Tree Fort's a real testament to that. Like Boise is very different than the rest of Idaho. I always thought of Idaho as Boise's like a pretty liberal place, and then Moscow's like per capita an extremely liberal place in like northern Idaho. And I just think I think it's really interesting that you have really one big epicenter and then a tiny epicenter, because I used to live up near there and there were some cool bands there too, but nothing compared to here. But that's super cool. Is there anything anyone wants to add about just stuff that they think's super important about the music scene, or just stuff they like, or stuff that should be noted?
I mean, I can just jump off of what we were saying about diversity. I remember going to Tree Fort one year, and there was probably 4 or 5 bands playing back to back to back, doing like 25 or 30-minute sets, and they were all speed metal bands. And I didn't really realize it, but all of them were from Boise. They were all Boise speed metal bands. It was like, I didn't even know we had one speed metal band from Boise. We have 5 speed metal bands from Boise. It's like Hummingbird of Death and a whole bunch of other ones.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like there's this, especially I think it's a little bit older than us, like the scene. Like we maybe missed that train, but there's definitely like a heavy ass part of Boise that like doesn't really get seen. Like a bunch of bands at the bomb shelter. Like have you guys ever been to the Boise bomb shelter downtown?
I have not. I have heard of it, and I really wanted to. I have a friend, his name's Sam, funny enough, who is in a metal band, and they do practices at the bomb shelter.
Yeah, so it's a nuclear like fallout shelter from the Cold War, and the guy that owns it rents it out to bands. And like if you walk in there, like you start hearing Satan like talk to you. It's intense.
That sounds so sick.
I've heard about it too. I've always wanted to go.
Yeah, it's right underneath the hill. I don't even know how to say this. You know where the giant hill is underneath Bogus Basin Road?
Yeah, like the Simplot Hill.
Yeah. So right across the street from that, there's like a bomb shelter. It doesn't really look like much. It just looks like dirt pile or whatever. But you can walk in. Like anybody can just open the door. It's crazy.
Definitely somewhere to visit before I die.
Absolutely, dude.
That's awesome. So just moving forward a bit, and this can be in the context of, I think the 2 big things that came up in just that conversation was accessibility and connections. I think, Carsen brought up networking, and we kind of talked about how networking and accessibility kind of, I have Legos in my hand for some reason, kind of go hand in hand to like, we don't have as many venues for all ages and just, smaller local bands. So we have to use the networks we make to create our own venues. So just in the context of those 2 ideas and this kind of general environment that it creates, do you think there's any oppression found in the Boise music scene? And I don't mean like, when I say oppression, it can be anything little, anything small. It can be from coming from the outside, inside. Do you just think there's any kind of forms of oppression or problematic situations that you've identified or experienced? Go for it, Carsen.
The one thing that comes to mind, or the first thing that comes to mind, is kind of what I think Cam mentioned, where all these venues were 21 plus, and as a high schooler, and when you're younger, you're like, dang, like all these bands that I want to see really bad are playing at these shows, and I just have to stand outside and maybe hope to catch a bit. But I think a lot of like the younger generation kind of is missing out on that. But you can't, I mean, they're bars, you can't really stop that from happening, but that's pretty much the person that comes to my mind.
Yeah, I was going to say age too, just age restrictions. And it's not to say that venues that are all ages can't exist. There was the Boise All Ages Movement Project that usually pops up around Treefort every year, and they were looking at getting their own like permanent space downtown. I don't know if they actually did, but it just sucks. Like Death Proof Coffee, losing Death Proof Coffee. That was an amazing venue that people could go to, and it was a coffee shop. It just seems like it's weird that coffee shops keep going out of business, but bars like manage to stay open for as long as they do. Like the Crux, yeah, the Crux was awesome. And then the Crux went out, and the Death Proof went out. Just like all these coffee shops are going out, but bars are staying open. And I think it's kind of a bad situation, but it's definitely something that needs to be addressed, is keeping all ages venues in Boise.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't really, like, in terms of impression, I don't really think there's anybody like, there's not a big enough fish to like really cause any oppression in terms of like bands having drama and beef. Like, sure, there's like high school whatever between everybody with like, maybe there's some people that don't like whatever, but that's just life, you know. But I wanted to point out that it seems to me that there's this rift between bands that are like 25 and older and kind of like in with the Treefort crowd and the Duck Club crowd, and bands that are like, you know, our age and younger, right? Like, not once have I heard of any of these bands that are in town reaching out to a band that is consistently playing the Hive, or a band that is consistently making music and holding house shows, and said, hey, come open for us at the Neuralex. So, or hey, come open for us at the Olympic. Because you can do that legally. You know, I've done that with my band, where you can go and play a bar when you're underage. You just go play music and then you have to leave. And I think if there was more of that in the scene, or older people reaching out to younger people, that's how you kind of get your foot in the door, to see somebody that has the resources to make a venue, to say, holy shit, there's like 16-year-olds killing it right now. Maybe there's a scene here. Maybe this is profitable. Because at the end of the day, like, we all want to make a venue. You know, everyone wants like, oh, we need to have a venue in town. But the people that'll do it are the ones that are going to make a profit from it, because that's how you keep it alive. So I think that's a big thing that I've noticed about the scene.
That's a really good point, because like when we meet people through like bands and other shows, I only meet people that are like our age or younger. I know that there's bands out there that are older, but I don't even I've never heard of them. I don't hear much about them. And I wonder if that's just like we're just missing out on the right person to hear about them or something.
For sure. It's like, if there is a clique, it's that. It's like, you're older than me.
Yeah, I'll go for it, Wyatt. Oh, okay.
No, I was good.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've observed that too. Like, we're talking about the metal bands. If you do go to some of the metal bands that are usually older than college age people, the audience is consistent with that demographic. It's usually older people, and there's a couple people our age. So that's pretty interesting. Do you think what do you think has caused that dynamic, or what's caused that situation? Was there anyone that made that, or any situation that made that happen?
I don't know. You know, I mean, I'm not in with them as much as I am with like my friends in the bands that are younger, I guess. But there's really no like bad blood, you know. It's not like, oh man, fuck these guys. These guys play me band and they're 16. I'm not going to book them. It's just like nobody's taken that step. So I'm not really sure what's caused it. Like, it could be the Crux, you know, because when all of those, and like the venue or whatever, when all those bands were our age, you know, there were venues and there was like a scene around. So they got like all buddy, and then there was this void in time when there's like no venues and no bands. So I think it was just time, I guess. But like, I met a lot of the people that make music older, and I've made music with people that are older, and it's like there's such like a potential here, such a potential for us to just kind of like kumbaya, join hands, and like pool our resources to like put Boise on the map and get noticed by somebody that's willing to like put in the resources to have an all ages venue and have like an artist collective and have all these things that this town really desperately needs.
Yeah, I was going to say that too, that there seems to be, I think one of the causes of it could just be a lack of cooperation between bands in the Valley and organizations like Duck Club in Boise that do a lot of promotion of older bands, we can say, like bands in their, you know, members within their like 26, 27, 20 years old, whatever. I think there's a lot less outreach to the younger groups, and that's kind of the see a need, fill a need that I've been trying to do the last 2 or 3 years with the Pulse, is like, oh no, there's a lot of really cool younger groups in Idaho that need representation, and we want to do that for them. So I think that could be a root cause of it, is the fact that there aren't a lot of groups in Boise, venues in Boise, groups in Boise's, artist collectives, like in the area, that are taking the time out to highlight those groups. And I don't know if it's because they think of them as like immature, or they think of them as not quality, which I think is completely BS. I think if there were more groups that were pushing for collaboration between generations of musicians in Boise and just bands in general, I think that would be great. And again, this is coming from a music promotion side, not really a musician side, but I think they should be fostering those relationships.
Totally. I mean, speaking of like see a need and feel a need, or fill a need, it kind of puts the ball in our court in terms of University Pulse and in terms of just our demographic, our peers, to kind of take that step and like look into those bands, listen to their music, you know. And I feel like when I started playing music when I was like 16 in Boise, I had like bands to like look up to, you know. There was like Marshall Poole, Lounge on Fire, Sunblood Stories, like all these bands that are totally in that category of like Duck Club and Treeport, that I like was like, holy shit, that's incredible, right? And I'm not really sure, I mean, with COVID, it's crazy, whatever, but like that the 16-year-olds now, you know, now that 5 years has gone by, have that like
that group to look up to, and to like be like, oh, I want to be doing what they're doing. It seems like if there is some kind of generational gap between the two of them, it doesn't seem like they're doing a lot to carry that over, right? It seems like they have, like you said, they're Marshall Poole's, Lounge on Fire, Sunblood Stories, just bands in the Boise area. And it's like, well, they're great.
Essential Boise bands, you know?
Yeah. It's like, oh, they're great musicians and great bands, but we should be pulling more people from these, you know, startups. It's like they've been playing shows at the Hive. They've been doing house shows. They've been doing tons of stuff for years and years and years and years. Don't you think that they've earned the respect of being able to be put into that same pool of musicians and bands and stuff that deserve to open for other groups in the Treasure Valley? So
for sure. And the one thing I want to bring up is like the ball's in our court, right? So like moving forward, it's the little guy's job to take that step and like reach out and say, hey, Marshall Poole, they don't exist anymore. Hey, whatever, Wend or Blood Lemon, come play a show at my house, please. And you never know. Maybe it's a yes. And that's where that relationship is born.
Yeah, talking about like just the lack of cooperation between like age groups, I feel not only is it just that lack of like cooperation and like working together, I feel it's just kind of also just that human thing where you're more comfortable around people that like are your age group, that know things that you do, or like grew up doing things that you like, or listening to music that you like. Because I mean, I especially see it with my dad whenever I share music with him, like newer music from artists that are releasing music now. He always kind of overlooks it because it's not dad rock Led Zeppelin that's like wicked crazy talented. And I just feel it's just kind of a human thing where you're just more comfortable with people that know things that you know and are in your kind of like your generation, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So that's just what makes it hard, because like branching out and going to like younger people, it's like uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think it's like a generational gap, honestly, because who's to say that those bands, didn't put in the work that we're doing, trying to, get bands that were their age at the time to also kind of start the scene going. And I think we're doing the same thing right now, where we're just trying to build each other up and just like put in the work. So who's to say that we might even like be in their spot in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that too, that it's like, Sam, I'm glad you invited myself to be in here again. I've said multiple times, not a musician, music promotion person, but it's like, I think it's upon us, kind of a younger generation. Like, I want to stay in music promotion in the Treasure Valley here in Boise. And it's like, I see that now as like I should probably step up and join organizations where they want to promote voices and younger bands in Boise. So yeah, if it is a generational gap, I think as long as there are people that are aware in our sort of generation of younger musicians and bands that say, hey, no, we want to step up into, being seen as like professional groups that can perform at venues in Boise. I think that's important.
Yeah, that's awesome. This has been great, guys. Everything you're talking about, and just to kind of recap what we've done so far, I think we kind of started off talking about the problem of accessibility with like venues, of having a place for all ages bands and all ages fans, and then we kind of got into, what Carsen was saying, connections. So connections between what Cam brought up, older and younger wave of different bands in Boise. And it's really interesting to see how all these problems are really connected. I think the two main problems we see here is lack of venues and lack of communication between the two age groups of bands. We can continue talking about both problems interchangeably, or we can focus on one or the other, or something completely different. Completely up to you guys. This is super open-ended, but just in the context of these problems or anything else you might want to talk about, do you think this is something that affects the entire Boise music scene community?
Yes. Yeah. I think definitely accessibility, and like the scene doesn't survive if there aren't new people joining the scene, because people are constantly leaving at the same rate. I remember thinking that just bands in recent years that it's like, oh, they aren't a thing. We said Marshall Poole, but it's like King Queen of the Losers. I looked at them and as like, oh, they're a rising band in Boise, and then King Queen of the Losers ended. So it's like, I felt really sad. Then it's like, and I turn and look and there's like 5 other bands that are just started within the last 2 years. And it's like, oh no, we're still surviving and going. It's just kind of like a natural life cycle thing. Bands get together, bands break up, bands get together, break up, whatever. It happens. And I think if we aren't fostering the younger generation of musicians and bands, then that life cycle will not continue. We will not have new groups coming into the Boise music scene if we are not fostering the relationships of young musicians coming into the music scene. So I think it's a life cycle thing, definitely.
Totally. It's cliche, but like most bands don't not make it, they break up, right? So that's just the status of music everywhere, I feel like. And I totally agree, Wyatt. I think kind of like looking out for the underdog a little bit and letting them have a platform, let the band that play their first show, and have that experience. That's huge. And I think, the Pulse does a good job at that, and I'm sure it'll get better with time.
Yeah, and it's like, even if that first show that they perform is a disaster nightmare, if it crashes and burns, it's still giving them the opportunity to try something out. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. If we aren't giving these opportunities to musicians, how are we going to grow the scene at all? How are we going to maintain it if we're not giving them the opportunity to do anything? So
totally.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Just how I didn't think about it like that, but how if you're not, if you're in a small scene, if you're not supporting everyone, it's going to make it just even that much harder. How important do you think this issue is perceived by people in the music community? Like, we're talking about it and we're aware of it, but do you think this is something that people are commonly aware of and talking about and worried about?
I know for a fact that there's adults, there's like fully fledged music people, the people that we want to be as we get older, that are completely aware and trying to change it, we talked about BAMP, and the Rock School and Duck Club and Treefort. They all are all kind of in the same boat. I've talked to those guys about how, like, damn, we need a venue, and we are kind of in this bubble right now, with this past year, obviously. So, like, it's not all Boise's fault at this point. The entire music scene in America right now is kind of got just swept clean. A lot of indie venues across the world shut down because of COVID, right? So we're kind of sitting at the bottom of the pool, and there's nowhere way but up. And now that we're all getting vaccinated, it's just a matter of time. And my big thing is entering the summer, when we can finally, like, have real shows again, is to just get the younger bands involved and, take the steps to have all different kinds of bands, put Boise, give it a platform to kind of sing its song, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it almost feels like a calm before the storm of this summer, where it's just like all of these bands that have had a year and a half off, and venues that it's like venues are like begging for musicians and bands to come perform. It's like, please, the Knitting Factory's not had a show in forever.
Yeah,
Totally.
So when venues eventually do open, I think it'll be great for bands to step in.
Well, because I think a positive to take out of, like, the whole COVID thing is, at this stage of the whole pandemic, it's what was I thinking? It's almost like kind of like a reset. Like, if any time is the best time to band or create a new thing, it'd be now, just because everything's about to kickstart and jump up back again. So it's just a positive outlook. It's like almost like a reset.
Which could be great for new venues opening up in Boise, that it's like you have, if you couldn't see all these bands adapting to change and doing live shows, us at the Pulse doing live streams, just bands in Boise doing small house shows or like river shows, outdoor stuff. If you can't see that, like, bands are like adapting and they still exist, they're still out there doing things, like venues, they would love to have places to play. So I think that's an exciting thing. I was going to say, sorry, I do have to leave here in just a second. So I'll be hopping out, but thank you everyone. Carsen, Cameron, Preston, Sam,
Wyatt.
thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Wyatt. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, see you, Wyatt.
So I was about to say, I really liked what Wyatt was saying about the, like, adapting, because a lot of the, like, when all those venues closed, when COVID happened and they couldn't get enough money to stay afloat, we felt like, not I say like we, but like the whole scene felt like we had a lot of obstacles because we didn't have anywhere to play. COVID was a thing, so we couldn't go out. We couldn't really see that many people, but we adapted. We made our own venues in the middle of nowhere, just like in nature. We do live streams. Like, I think that's so cool that bands are doing live streams now. It's really common, way more common than it used to be. And I like that because we can look at it anytime we, like, have the time. And, like, we can see and we can still watch them perform with all these obstacles that we've been given.
Yeah, that's super cool. And it's cool, like, at Pulse Fest, it's cool to see younger people and bands stand up and say, yeah, we're going to put on shows, but we're going to do it like the safe, right way. Like at Pulse Fest, everyone was super respectful. They stayed distanced, and when they wanted to dance and mosh, they kept their masks on. Like, I was really honestly surprised by that. I kind of expected a certain level of just kind of like not thinking about it too much, but I think that's really cool to see that people, they understand that if they don't do it the right way, they might not get to do it at all, and they care about the community and keeping everyone safe and healthy. So I've just really enjoyed seeing that. So we've talked a lot about a couple different problems that kind of revolve around venues and connections and kind of communication gaps and involvement gaps between different groups of people. And again, this whole exercise has just been kind of get us talking about potential problems in the scene and get us thinking about what are some problems we're facing. But if we were to solve any of these problems or choose one thing we'd want to do to kind of like choose one issue we've talked about today to kind of tackle, or choose one thing to build a solution towards, what do you think would be the most realistic and most effective?
So I got a couple thoughts on this. I think once shows can happen again, I want to see more bands that I know and more of my friends play at the Hive. You know, when I was in high school, the Hive had this repertoire. You know, there was a lot of punk rock and just sick bands playing there. And as it kind of a couple years go by, and it kind of became this flat yet dead environment where I was going to see these people play. You know, maybe it was their first time, maybe it was their 500th time, and nobody was there. Like there's not this like community around the Hive, and the Hive just doesn't get enough credit. Maybe it's just because where it is located, you know, it's on the bench, it's not downtown, whatever. But it is a staple in the music scene where hundreds of bands practice every week, and they have a sick, brand new sound system and like a stage and a space. Like, what more could you ask for? So like putting the Hive with some more legitimacy. A lot of times with my friends, I feel like I hear like, you know, it's the Hive show but that's not the mentality we should be taking, I feel. And then also, so there's one venue, let's play there. Playing in your garage, playing in your backyard, inviting your friends over. Like once shows happen or can happen safely according to CDC or whatever, like let's do it. Like go play downtown, hook up a generator, hook up a car battery. Like there's nobody stopping us but us as the community. We just got to kind of take that step, like just do it ourselves. So that's the kind of the two band-aids on the situation that I want to see happen.
Yeah, I think that it's really important that every like musician and people that like going to shows never lose the passion for going to shows. I think that once things open up, it's like we're gonna see it everywhere. People are gonna be super excited, and everyone's just gonna be like bringing everyone like each other up and being super supportive on each other. And I really like that about our scene is like everyone is always trying to like bring the other person up, and then like they're just sharing like positivity and like what's the word I'm thinking of? They're just like keeping them going basically.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think like we've been saying, within the age groups that people like kind of associate with, I think there's a lot of support, and especially now a lot of excitement. Out of necessity, I wouldn't be surprised to see more kind of because I was at Pulse Fest where the Seatopians are kind of an older band compared to them and the Lakes. I wouldn't be surprised if out of necessity we see more kind of inclusion and kind of melting pot of older and younger bands playing together, just because there's less shows available and less times to go play your music live. Yeah, Preston.
Right. And well, like with that, I feel like that would solve the whole like kind of like community age gap like issue. Just that whole like the Pulse Fest was like a great concert. I mean, despite it being, you know, wildly different genres like surf rock versus like indie rock, but it was still like turned out fantastic. And I feel like that is just like the prime example of what it could be for, you know, different age grouped bands. Like it's like working together and cooperating is brings out such a great product. So pursuing that here on, I feel like would help fix that issue and just kind of bring everyone together.
For sure. And I think it's even if it wasn't an issue, I think just having a show where you see three really different bands is really cool. I have a really like, especially these days, I have a really across the board kind of music taste. I'll just about listen to anything. So I love that you can go to a show and see all kinds of different people. So I love about Treefort, you know, you go see like a hard rock and noise rock band, and then you walk 2 minutes and see like a dream pop band. And I really think Boise, with the different kind of bands it has available, should really utilize that dynamic to create a really unique and fun music scene. So just talking about kind of working towards more of a, you know, solution or taking steps to make, you know, some of the problems here in the music scene less of a big deal. Have there been any like past attempts or current things going on trying to bring more inclusive all ages venues or bring more connections between different groups of bands and stuff like that, or different fans?
I mean, I would say the Pulse is doing that. They're showcasing individual bands and doing, you know, like sets with them. And we can like with interviews, it's so cool to like get to know the people and their thoughts behind the music that they're making. But I would also say the Hive, another, you know, a project where they're just doing live streams at the moment. But it's also like any exposure for any of these bands is super helpful and it goes a long way. Um, but yeah, I think any exposure to any bands is super helpful and supportive.
For sure. I totally agree. And I think that's something you can kind of learn from. You can see what they've done well is they've, you know, Pulse, we've gone out and you know, tried to get bands and talk to them. And I think if when you interview people, I think you hear a lot more than the music. You hear about kind of some of the stuff we're talking right now, because a lot of the Boise bands seem pretty invested in the scene. They're interested in what other people are doing. Do you think there's any, and this can be from Pulse or anything you've experienced, do you think there's anything negative that's come from trying to solve this dynamic that we could learn from moving on in the future? If not, that's totally okay, because I know we're talking in kind of semi-abstract terms right now. Let's see. Do you think there's anything, because like Cam kind of brought up a good point of like the Boise scene isn't really big enough for there to be like a big enough fish to be like a huge, you know, oppressive force, really. Do you think there's anything outside the music scene that's really creating a problematic situation to the scene or maybe helping the scene? Just any outside dynamics you want to talk about?
Well, sorry, one sec. You think about there's no industry here, and there's no sense of like we're playing music in Boise to make it. You know, there's nobody's moving here to get a record deal or a record contract or anything like that. So there's this. I don't want. I mean, it's like there's artistic hubs across the United States that are like that, like LA and New York. You know, people go there to go and make it, right? So the fact that there's no industry here kind of brings up the sense of like, okay, we're making music because I need to, you know, it's like because I'm an artist or I need to like write because it's part of me and I need to play shows. You know, it's not a matter of I'm doing this to get this payoff, you know. And I think that's why we're all kind of invested in each other, because in historically, you know, the bands that have kind of blown up out of here, you know, there's like two bands come to mind, you know, Built to Spill in the 90s, obviously, but they were playing in Seattle all the time in Washington. And then Youth Lagoon, which blew up 2000s and went to Texas or something like that. I don't know, moved out of town, right? So I am really waiting for like this community to like rise up together and get to the point where we do kind of see somebody kind of sail off from Boise, you know, in recent times. Because in the status of the music industry now, you don't need to be anywhere to make it just because you have social media. It's because you have fucking TikTok, you know, you can be anywhere and make it. So the second that happens, the second that the Boise sees somebody go and, you know, do the distance thing, everyone kind of gets raised up in legitimacy a little bit. Like if you think about Seattle in the 90s, nobody gave a shit about Seattle, you know, it wasn't a music town. And then the grunge, Mother Love Bone, Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, whatever, Pearl Jam, blow up, becomes the biggest thing in the world. And then now everyone thinks, oh, Seattle, that's Nirvana. You know, I seriously feel like that's what Boise is now. It's that calm before the storm. And yeah.
I would totally agree with that. I think that kind of thing that happened with Seattle is going to happen to Boise like in the next couple of years. I'm pretty confident about it.
Yeah. You think about it's the #1 growing city in America. And there's a bunch of people from California moving here. And all these punk ass kids that are mad at their parents are going to start writing songs. You know, it's that simple. You could think of it in terms like that. Like the scene is only going to continue to grow. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, it's almost like a ticking time bomb, but like a good bomb, not like a bad bomb that blows everything up.
Yeah,
But
maybe a bad bomb. You never
maybe,
know.
I
We
don't
could
know, maybe.
we could get like a Nickelback band to come out of Boise.
Ah,
Shoot ourselves in the face.
and then we just our legitimacy just goes down. But
Yeah,
like that's the thing with Boise. It's such like a underrepresented and just overlooked place. Just because like coming from Tucson, when I was telling all my friends like, oh, I'm going to Boise State and everything, the only thing that came to their mind is potatoes. That's it. Like
totally.
it's not even a joke. It's literally just, oh, that's the potato place. Oh, there's potatoes there. Nobody even gives a thought to anything music related or the city itself. It's just
Yeah,
potatoes. So
it's kind of beautiful in that way. We have our own little corner of the world that we can hide from.
right.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what's interesting, like what Cam was saying, it is the fastest growing city in the United States, or at least the Treasure Valley region is very. And what's really weird about that is it's all residential. Almost, I'm on urban studies and community development major, so like I hear that fact about Boise being the fastest growing city like legit every other day, like it's mentioned in a class. And you look at Meridian and even Cuna now, and even Nampa, and it's just like all this huge, and Harris Ranch near where I live in Southeast Boise. I'm a little ways from there. Um, you see all this huge residential expansion, and like we're talking COVID again, it's a bubble and it's weird, but you don't see that much art and cultural infrastructure added to the city. And it's like, well, statistically, if you have more people, people are moving here because of the art and cultural infrastructure, right? That's why people want to live in cities. They want to live in a nice place that has, nice parks, a green belt. I consider, I consider cultural like green spaces, art, museums, music venues, nice restaurants. And we just haven't seen that big of a growth in those. All the places downtown, downtown's kind of, you know, what's there is going to stay there. There might be some owner business changes, but you can't really add new infrastructure to downtown because it's the oldest part of Boise and it's all kind of contained. And
Packed in.
yeah, exactly. But even like in Meridian or in other places here in Southeast Boise, where I still feel like a lot of space for development, we're not seeing that. So I find that all really interesting. I think we're going to get to a point where like all these people are going to move here. They're like, well, we moved here, but now there's, when we want to go do something, there's a fucking 20-person line to 10 barrel, like which is kind of already like that. So I find that dynamic really interesting. And I think by just helping the music uh, scene can only help everything else in Boise and make
Totally.
everyone like it here a little bit more. And if it is, I don't think that the thing is like, I don't think there's really any stopping growth. Um, People can complain about it and blame other states, and that's fair. I understand the frustration, but I think the best thing you can do is cope with it and figure out like creative solutions of how to still make your city cool and unique and welcoming for people who are coming in, but cathartic for the people who've already lived here. So, anyways, that's my little tangent about it. But I think that's about all I have. Just to kind of recap, I think we had a really great conversation about why you guys like the Boise music scene and the cool dynamics. And I think it's really interesting. Early on, we kind of pinpointed accessibility and connectivity and networking like as being kind of the two primary things that you can really nail down about the music scene. I think everything we've talked about really stems from them, and I think that's really interesting. A lot of the problems come from them, and a lot of the benefits come from that. And a big thing with solving problems is when you have a solution, there's always going to be positives and negatives. So, like, if we were to add more venues for all ages bands, maybe there'd be less of a DIY ethic for people to go do their own thing, like we talked about. So, it's just interesting to think about stuff like that. But yeah, basically, this was super helpful. I just really wanted to do this to have kind of a community organizing event where we could get thinking about what it's like to be in this music scene, problems, and ways we want to make it better. So thank you guys so much. I know I've gotten my chance to talk a bunch now. So if there's anything else you want to add, go for it. And then I'll let you go because I've kept you guys for a while and I really appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Sam. Preston, it was nice to meet you. Carson,
Yeah,
I'll
no,
see
totally.
you sometime. All right, see you guys.
Yes, sir.
See you, Cam.
Yeah,
I think
no,
I have all I've got to say too.
Okay,
Sorry.
Yeah.
awesome. You're totally good. Thank you guys so much.
Cool.
Yeah, no.
Thanks, Sam.
Have a
Yeah,
great day.
thanks for hosting this, Sam. This was pretty great.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll catch you later then.
See you
Cool.
guys later.
Thanks, Sam.
See ya.
Yeah,
Thanks.
see ya.